look at the top headlines this hour. Russia has informed that a Ukrainian drone strike ignited a fire that killed a child and her grandmother in a town outside of Moscow overnight. The deadly attack comes as US Vice President J.D. Vance says that Washington is considering Ukraine's request for long-range Tomahawk missiles to push back against Russia. US President Donald Trump is all set to host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, pushing a Gaza peace proposal amid European recognition of Palestinian statehood. This marks Netanyahu's fourth visit since Trump returned to office, even as Israel is seeking to shore up US support while facing mounting criticism. Moldova's pro-European Union ruling party scored a resounding victory over its Russian-leaning rival in a key parliamentary election. Meanwhile, the win is being seen as a strong endorsement of Moldova's bid to join the EU. A man crashed his vehicle into a church in Michigan and opened fire with an assault rifle, setting the building ablaze and killing at least 4 and injuring 8 others. The alleged suspect died in a shootout with the police. The FBI is now leading the investigation, calling this act targeted violence. Iran has executed Bahman Chobi Asal today for allegedly spying for Israel's Mossad, with the Iranian Supreme Court upholding his death sentence on charges of corruption. The execution marks at least the 10th such case in recent months amid escalating tensions between Iran and Israel. Spain's economic minister Carlos Cuerpo has now stated that he expects the EU trade agreement to be ratified by the year end. The deal would scrap duties on 91% of EU exports and 92% of Mercosur exports over 10 years, despite resistance from countries including France. China has now launched its new K-visa program to attract young foreign STEM graduates without a job offer requirement, positioning itself as an alternative to the US after Washington imposed a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas. Beijing hopes that the initiative will boost its tech sector and signal openness to global talent. Japan has strongly protested after a Chinese research vessel, the Xiangyang 22, was spotted 379 kilometers west of a Japanese island conducting unauthorized ocean research in its exclusive economic zone. Tokyo has warned that such activities are unacceptable even as tensions rise. Oregon has filed a federal lawsuit against Donald Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard while calling the move as unconstitutional overreach. Now, as per reports, the suit filed names Donald Trump, War Secretary Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and the Department of Homeland Security as defendants, while also seeking a court order to halt the deployment and declare the move as unlawful. The legal challenge comes after Trump announced that he was directing the Pentagon to send around 200 troops to Portland to protect, as he claims, an area which is war-ravaged and where ICE facilities are under siege from attacks by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. Trump has also claimed that he has been authorizing full force if necessary. Listen in to what Attorney General of Oregon has had to say.
At 9:32 this morning, we received communication from the governor's office that the president had invoked Title 10 to deploy Oregon's National Guard to the city of Portland. I had told our staff, and we've been talking about this for a really long time, that the moment that we got notice of a deployment, that I wanted to be in court with a lawsuit filed within 12 hours. As of 2 o'clock today, we have a lawsuit filed in Portland in the United States District Court to protect Oregon and its values, less than 6 hours from the moment we received notice.
Shifting focus to more developments coming in from Europe this time. Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot and German Foreign Minister Johann Vadeful have met in Warsaw within the Weimar Triangle framework. Now, the meeting aims to highlight cooperation among the three countries amid a series of alleged Russian incursions into NATO airspace. Now, a joint press conference is planned for later in the day. NATO, meanwhile, has launched the Eastern Sentry mission this month to strengthen the defense of Europe's eastern flank in response to these drone incursions, especially into Polish airspace. The Weimar Triangle provides Germany, France and Poland with a key forum to coordinate on cross-border and European issues involving not just governments, but also parliaments and civil societies. This is, of course, the latest that is coming in. Even as a barrage of strikes have been reported in Ukraine overnight, Russia launched more than 500 such drones and missiles, most of which were thwarted by Ukraine. However, some did strike civil infrastructure, including residences and other energy infrastructure as well. Meanwhile, Moscow has reported that a drone strike has claimed the lives of 2 people, including a child and her grandmother, just outside the capital. Kremlin, in the meantime, maintains that they are open to negotiations, but has claimed that Kiev has given no signals about resuming talks. The larger question, of course, is how long will we see this war drag on? Will we also see it protract or not? But in the latest, we're now learning that the foreign ministers of Poland, France and Germany are meeting in Warsaw. This meeting aims to highlight cooperation amongst the 3 countries amidst a series of alleged incursions into NATO airspace. We've recently seen these incursions take place in Poland. Romania too has alleged such drone incursions, as has Lithuania. Ukraine, meanwhile, has pointed fingers at Hungary, claiming that drones from Hungary were surveilling border infrastructure, critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure along Ukraine's western border, a charge which Hungary has now been denying. Of course, the battle on the ground is also heating up, but joining us on the broadcast is Alison Mutler, former Associated Press Bureau Chief in Romania. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I'd like to ask you, what do you make of NATO's response to the drone incursions that have taken place so far? We do know that Operation Eastern Sentry has been launched, but Zelenskyy is claiming that a stronger response is the need of the hour. Is NATO's current posture strategically calibrated to avoid an all-out war with Russia?
I actually think what has come across is that Russia will only listen to force. By that doesn't mean launching weapons, but a robust reaction. If NATO fails to deliver a unified response, Russia, the Kremlin, will take that as weakness. And I think NATO has realized in recent months that they have to be unified and deliver a stern response. Mr. Zelenskyy, his country has been invaded by Russia for the past 3 years. Hundreds of thousands, if not more, has died. It's much more vital, much more crucial. The idea of a war is quite abstract, particularly in Portugal or in France or even in the UK, along NATO's eastern flank, Eastern Sentry, as you mentioned, Poland and Romania. The prospect of war is much more imminent and it's much more scary. We just saw, if you like, Moldova dodge a bullet in the sense that they avoided Russian interference in the future of their country. Now, has NATO been strong enough in pushing back Russia or keeping them at a distance? I think what we have to remember is behind all of this, neither Russia nor the West, nor that includes NATO, wants an all-out war. It's very complicated, it's very dangerous. And I don't think it will happen unless things get ratcheted up. So both sides are actually playing, Russia particularly, a game. Let's see how far we can push. Let's see how much we can do. Let's see how the other side reacts. So on the one hand, NATO is obliged to react firmly and more important, in a unified way. But on the other hand, I don't think Russia, at this point, as far as I know, wants an all-out war, and nor does NATO. So I think also the idea is for neither side to lose face, but also NATO has to deliver a strong and a unified response to Russian aggression.
All right, ma'am, I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some breaking developments from Warsaw. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy has spoken at the Warsaw Security Forum, where he joined Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk to reaffirm the relationship between Ukraine and Poland, as well as European Union. President Zelenskyy has also spoken about the peace deal which is on the table that was recently endorsed by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who incidentally met Putin recently. He's also, in fact, spoken about negotiations with American President Donald Trump. Listen in.
President Trump, as his rhetoric changed, the signals have changed, and the attitude to Ukraine and security in Europe have changed. And there is a deep understanding of what's going on the battlefield, and it's important that it corresponds to reality. Reality that we see every day. His attitude toward justice, just responses to Russian aggression against Ukraine, his attitude now is just. This is what I heard from him. This is what was there during our discussions. I cannot say what tomorrow will bring, because the world is changing much faster than somebody could have forecasted. So as of today, the stance of President Trump is, in my view, it is truly balanced, and it supports Ukraine's stance. Although undoubtedly he wants to be and to remain a mediator between us and Russia in order to end this war. And even on this item, in the fact that he wants to end the war as soon as possible, here Ukraine supports his steps. Our task for today is to preserve the new attitude of the United States of America toward this. President Trump, as his rhetoric changed, the signals have changed, and the attitude to Ukraine and security in Europe have changed. And there is a deep understanding of what's going on the battlefield, and it's important that it corresponds to reality. Reality that we see every day. His attitude toward justice, just responses to Russian aggression against Ukraine, his attitude now is just. This is what I heard from him. This is what was there during our discussions. I cannot say what tomorrow will bring, because the world is changing much faster than somebody could have forecasted. So as of today, the stance of President Trump is, in my view, it is truly balanced, and it supports Ukraine's stance. Although undoubtedly.
Still with us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Mutler. Interesting statements coming in from Zelensky. He's reaffirmed Ukraine's aspirations to join the European Union. That is not all. He's in fact also pointed out Donald Trump's frequent changing rhetoric, calling his current outlook as just. Interestingly, Zelensky has been seeking American Tomahawk missiles to gain an edge on the ground. In your assessment, will the Trump administration consider this proposal as indicated by J.D. Vance?
It's hard to say, as was said just now in the translation. Trump does. It's very hard with Trump because he often does change his mind, and he's not predictable. And in fact, that's one of his personal political weapons, is to keep people guessing. But he does appear to be changing his attitude towards Ukraine with signing off on the weapons, etc. And he does appear, obviously, he is a politician, so he has a lot of people behind him, the MAGA, J.D. Vance, etc., etc. He might seem very free the way he speaks, but he's not free in the slightest because he has a lot of people who support him. He has a lot of groups he has to keep happy, etc. So you have to remember, when Trump talks, it's not Trump talking, it's Trump and the people that support him talking. So he only has a certain amount of leeway in what he says. But what we've seen recently, he does seem to, I mean, he is the president. J.D. Vance, can afford to be more freewheeling. What he said about Romania was just, honestly, now we can see this months in advance, was very superficial and just political. He didn't really seem to know what he was talking about, but it looked good. It was exciting. Look, how's this country that cancels its elections? What a load of rubbish. But he hadn't actually looked at all the deep intelligence of what had been happening. But he could afford to say things like that because he's not the president of the United States. So we have to look at what the president of the United States does, what he's saying, and he does seem to be taking a tougher line with Vladimir Putin and with Ukraine, whether he wants to or not. Maybe he's just being pragmatic. I also personally think he does not like the geopolitical shift to the east, which means that America is much weaker on the world stage. And this is why he is trying to play a role in the big world conflicts like the Middle East, like Ukraine, etc., etc. Also because he says he wants a Nobel Prize, but he doesn't want to go down as the president that made America weak, or weak again. And so I think we are seeing a bit of fighting back on that.
All right, ma'am, I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking further developments from Europe. We're now learning that Moldova's pro-European Party of Action and Solidarity has secured a majority in the country's parliament following a crucial election overshadowed by allegations of Russian interference. The result is being widely seen as a strong affirmation of Moldova's EU aspirations and has drawn swift and supportive reactions from key European leaders. European Commission leader Ursula von der Leyen has applauded Moldovans for standing firm in the face of foreign pressure. She stated that the vote showed the country's clear commitment to Europe, democracy and freedom, values that EU shares, and will continue to support Moldova moving closer to integration. French President Emmanuel Macron has praised Moldovan voters for resisting external influence and choosing a path of sovereignty and democratic progress. He's also reaffirmed France's full support for Moldova's European ambitions. Kaja Kallas has stated that the result proved that even well-funded disinformation and interference efforts could not undermine a people determined to remain free. She's emphasized that Moldova has shown courage and clarity in choosing a European future. Meanwhile, President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, has highlighted the strength of Moldova's democratic choice, noting that despite clear attempts by Russia to influence the election, Moldovans voted overwhelmingly for reform, democracy and deeper ties with Europe. Of course, the statements have been flashing on your screen. Still with us on the broadcast is Alison Mutler. Interesting verdict by the people of Moldova. We do know that Moldova has been vying for EU membership for a while now. It applied and was granted a candidate in status in 2022, and accession negotiations commenced last year, with now President Maya Sandu's pro-EU party returning to power with a clear majority. Is this process likely to be accelerated?
My view is yes, it will be. I think the result was an excellent one for the EU, for Europe, because it means that Russia has been rebuffed. Russia no longer has Russia has not managed to unseat Maya Sandu and sway the election and return Moldova to Moscow's orbit, which is what it wanted. Moldova is a very small country. It's a former Soviet state, but it's a very strategic country. It lies on NATO and EU's border. It's close to the Black Sea, and it's close to Odessa. It also has this breakaway area. It has two breakaway areas, but the main one is Transnistria, which is a sort of relic of the old Soviet Union. I mean, they have these sort of Soviet flags, and they seem to be living like it was in the Soviet Union 30-odd years ago. And a lot of people that live there, most of the citizens, are Russians and Ukrainians. The area is not internationally recognized, but it's strategically very important for Russia. And Moldova as a whole, small that it may be, is extremely strategic, which is why they threw in a lot of money. I've heard reports of hundreds of millions of euros, I have no idea, in trying to sway the result of this election, which they abysmally failed to do. I don't think they will stop their hybrid war, but it's good news for Europe. And I think Europe, seeing the fragile state that this part of the world is in, I wouldn't be surprised if they accelerated Moldova's accession process, particularly as they see the EU sees Maya Sandu as an extremely reliable partner. If we look in the last months, there were visits by Emmanuel Macron, Sebastian Merz, Donald Tusk, a Romanian president. A lot of European leaders made very prominent visits to Chisinau to show their support to Maya Sandu. The message was Europe, the big countries of Europe like France and Germany are on your side. We support you. And now they have the election result they want, the outcome they want. So I think as a reward, I would not be surprised. I'm not saying fast track. I don't exactly know what that means. But they would not like to see Moldova in its next election slip away back into the Russian orbit.
All right, ma'am. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we shift focus towards further developments coming in. Now, following its formation over the Bahamas, tropical storm Imelda, which seemed to be headed towards the American mainland, has now turned away from its projected path. New projections show Imelda heading out towards the Atlantic, potentially drawn out by the emergence of Hurricane Humberto in a natural phenomenon called the Fujiwara binary interaction. This happens when an extratropical cyclone like Imelda is attracted to the low pressure of another cyclone in its vicinity. This rare effect causes the two cyclones to chase the low pressure they leave in their wake, locked in a pivot motion around each other till they dissipate. Such a phenomenon reportedly occurs in less than 1% of such extreme weather events. Now, as a result of this, Tropical Storm Imelda is now expected to pass by the American mainland, potentially mitigating economic losses which were earlier estimated at $10 to $20 billion from a direct landfall. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Desmond Majekudunmi, environmentalist from Lagos. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I would like to understand a little more about the Fujiwara binary interaction and how this can help potentially not just save lives, but also ensure that monetary losses do not take place in the United States.
Yes, well, the reactions are good. The American government have to be commended. They get their predictions pretty accurately. But it's difficult, you know, because hurricanes, winds, tornadoes, they shift without too much, you know, warning. And it's difficult to assess. The main thing that we need to take away from this, though, is that there's another Hurricane 5 category storm brewing as a result of this. And it is very rare that you'll get, we've already had one Hurricane 5, and we're talking of, you know, 125 kilometers mile per hour wind in the area, which is, you know, catastrophic. It'll remove roofs, it'll tear down buildings, cause all kinds of chaos. But it's very rare that you have two Category 5 hurricanes in one season. But this is happening more often, and this is exactly what is happening in this particular location. One of the tornadoes is probably going to miss too much landfall so it won't cause too much damage. But the reality is that we are exacerbating this situation. We are creating a situation whereby you will have more of these extremely violent storms. In fact, some people are saying they're going to have to start creating new categories soon because the wind speeds are going to go way over the top in no time at all in the next few years to come, simply because we are doing things that are warming up the planet. More heat, more energy, bigger winds, bigger storms. So this is the lesson that we have to take away from this, and we just hope that people will be saved from too much stress and distress in this particular occurrence. But for it to happen twice in one season, there could still be another one, which will be unprecedented. But definitely it's coming at us, and we're not taking cognizance of it. In fact, in a lot of cases, we're denying it's happening. It's like, you know, putting up two fingers and denying that it's four fingers. I mean, come on.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to Latin America, particularly Peru, where at least 19 people, including a police officer, have been injured in protests against President Dina Boluarte and the Congress. Hundreds, remember, marched towards Lima's government seats under heavy police presence. Now, protesters threw stones, petrol bombs and fireworks, while police responded with tear gas and rubber bullets. The National Human Rights Coordinator reported 18 injuries, including that of a journalist. A police officer suffered first-degree burns from a Molotov cocktail, and the coordinator of National de Derechos Humanos accused the police of excessive force, while public outrage grows over corruption, rising crime and a pension law passed under the current regime. Now, the unrest has increased since Boluarte took office after former President Pedro Castillo's removal in 2022.
Defendiéndolo, me imagino que les han subido el sueldo para que estén ahí parados y no hagan nada. Aquí sí se reúnen todos con valor y están ahí unidos, pero contra el crimen, lo que es en la calle, no, nunca están y aparecen siempre tarde, lo que es
Nosotros queremos hacer el cambio para que dentro de 5 años aquellos jóvenes niños que tienen ahora 10, 13 años no tengan que salir a las calles. Queremos que ellos crezcan en un mejor país y puedan desarrollarse profesionalmente, con sus familias. Y quizás que estos fines de semana, sábado y domingo, puedan pasar en familia. Nosotros podríamos estar viendo una película, saliendo, comiendo con amigos, pero tenemos que estar acá porque este país ya no aguanta más de la forma en que está.
Well, viewers, that's all.